Hello, I'm Nate, aka B-Tier Mutineer, and today in my B-Tier guides for Dragon Age Inquisition, I'm going to take you through a build guide for Iron Bull, the incredibly large and muscular Qunari warrior. Iron Bull loves the thrill of the fight, whether he's fighting regular enemies, the demons he fears, or the dragons he respects. He has the Reaver specialization, which focuses on damaging multiple enemies at once, and getting bonuses from either him or his enemies being injured. So because of this, I'm making Bull's build into a full-on damager focused on dealing a lot of area of effect, AoE damage, staying up close and personal with enemies, and inflicting a lot of critical hits and status effects. This will generally combine well with a lot of other damager builds, like my version of Dorian's build, which focuses on inflicting fear. Bull works well against feared, stunned, and knocked down enemies, so he'd definitely appreciate having Dorian in the party, possibly for multiple reasons. But I'll talk about the party composition in more detail in the tactics section. Anyway, as is always the case with my builds, I mostly make lore and character-friendly choices instead of optimal min-maxing ones, so you'll see that I don't recommend extremely specific or overpowered crafted items. Inquisition's crafting system is broken, and if you abuse it to create the most overpowered items, it takes away from the fun and excitement of fighting enemies and fighting cool new items while playing. As part of the recommended gear section, I will give you the main stats I think are good for crafted items and items which you find as loot or obtain as rewards. You'll be able to choose for yourself whether you want to craft stuff or just use whatever rare or unique items you find or buy. Before we get into the build, I want to take a moment to say a special thank you to my members who help keep this channel running. I'd really appreciate it if you'd consider joining the channel as a member to support me and unlock perks like early access to videos. Joining is very much appreciated, but not required. I am always thankful, even if you just take the time to like the video and maybe leave a comment. Back to the build. Similar to other companions who aren't part of your starting group, Bull is recruited slightly later on after you get access to the Storm Coast region and meet his mercenary company, Bull's Chargers. I'm going to assume you're level 5 when you go recruit him in the Storm Coast, because that's the level I'm usually at when I unlock that area. In terms of starting abilities, Bull won't have any unlocked by default, so you're free to spend his ability points as you wish without needing to use a Tactician's Renewal Amulet to respecialize him. Non-human characters have one more ability point than their current level, so if you're level 5, then Bull will have 6 points you can spend. As a Qunari, Iron Bull also gets the racial benefit of plus 10% melee defense. The early game, as I define it, is until level 7, so I'll take you through all 8 abilities and passives I recommend you unlock during this time. I'll assume you have Bull from level 5, so the first 6 abilities will be just recommended without a specific level recommendation. From the two-handed tree, unlock Mighty Blow, a great damaging ability that knocks down enemies for a few seconds. Mighty Blow is also an impact detonator ability, which you can use on incapacitated foes for a combo effect. You can use this for good combos on frozen enemies for the Shatter combo, or on paralyzed enemies for the Discharge combo. From the Vanguard tree, unlock Warcry, Charging Bull, very fitting here, isn't it? And the It'll Cost You passive. Warcry taunts nearby enemies, causing them to be more likely to attack your warrior. The warrior also gains 20% guard per enemy. Guard acts like a second health bar on top of your regular health bar, and it doesn't fade away over time unlike the Mage's Barrier. You won't need Bull to use this ability later on when he has ways to sustain himself in battle through a heal effect, but in the early and mid-game, this is a super useful ability to make him a bit more resilient. Charging Bull is mainly a movement ability that makes a warrior charge and slam into enemies, knocking them down for a few seconds and gaining 10% guard per each enemy you hit. I'm not entirely sure how well the AI uses this ability on its own, so you will have to experiment with it a little bit and see if Bull uses it properly to ram into enemies. I just think it would be an absolute shame to not include an ability called Charging Bull for a character named Iron Bull. It's also extremely good at closing the gap between your warrior and ranged enemies. It'll Cost You makes enemies that attack Bull in melee take 50% of the damage they deal. Very useful, especially later on when Bull will enjoy taking damage from multiple enemies to keep his own health lower, but also good early to help you kill enemies faster by having them damage themselves by attacking your warrior. Unlocking this also grants plus 3 strength. From the Battlemaster tree, unlock Grappling Chain and the Chains for Days upgrade for it. Grappling Chain pulls a target into melee range with a warrior and deals a moderate amount of damage to them while doing so. Chains for Days causes Grappling Chain to pull in all enemies within 5 meters of your initial target as well. This upgrade is extremely useful since Bull wants to be able to damage multiple enemies at once with his cleaving or AoE type of weapon, as well as with various abilities later on. These were the starting abilities I recommend you unlock if you recruit Bull when you're level 5. Now we'll continue with the recommended abilities for the early game until reaching level 7. At level 6, unlock the Crippling Blows passive, which makes Bull's critical hits weaken enemies, reducing the damage they deal by 15% for 10 seconds. This effect stacks, so it'll be useful to have a high crit chance on Bull to constantly weaken enemies and inflict other effects later on. Unlocking this passive also grants +3 strength. At level 7, unlock the Coup de Grace passive, which grants a 30% damage bonus against enemies that are knocked down or stunned. In the early game, you already have Mighty Blow, which knocks down enemies, as well as Charging Bull, but you will also have a couple more abilities to help you get this damage bonus more often later. At the end of the early game, you'll have 4 active abilities: Mighty Blow, Warcry, Charging Bull, and Grappling Chain. Bull's auto attacks with his AoE weapon should be pretty good, so auto attacks together with Mighty Blow will be your main source of damage. The other 3 abilities are for sustain and utility. Moving on to the mid-game from level 8 to 15. Here you're mostly focusing on improving your damage until level 11. When you reach level 11, specialization abilities are unlocked, and from that point onwards, we'll focus on Bull's Reaver abilities, which are very powerful. At level 8, pick up Block and Slash. This is an ability that unfortunately the companion AI doesn't seem to know how to use, so I recommend disabling it immediately in Bull's tactics just in case he would use it randomly and waste stamina on it. It's a sustained ability that you keep active in order to deflect an enemy attack and deliver a counter attack to the enemy that attacked you. Sounds great in theory, but unfortunately unless you're using it manually at the right moment, it's a waste of space on your ability bar. However, it is a prerequisite for the next 2 abilities in the two-handed tree that we're interested in. At level 9, unlock the Flow of Battle passive, which makes your critical hits reduce the cooldowns of your abilities by 1 second. As I mentioned earlier, you want to improve Bull's crit chance to make use of various effects, and cooldown reduction is one of them. Unlocking this passive also grants +3 strength. At level 10, unlock Pommel Strike, which is a quick strike that stuns a single target. Remember that Bull deals bonus damage to enemies which are stunned or knocked down due to the Coup de Grace passive, so Pommel Strike is a great ability to have because of this. At level 11, Bull's Reaver specialization becomes available, so go ahead and pick up the first ability in the tree, Ring of Pain. This ability creates a 15-meter circle on the ground which deals continuous spirit damage to enemies inside it, and also grants the warrior a damage bonus of 1% for every 1% of the warrior's missing health while the warrior is inside the circle. It costs 5% stamina per second to keep this ability up, so Bull may not be able to keep this ability up for very long, at least at first, but it's really powerful due to the fact that it deals spirit damage to enemies, since no enemy is immune or resistant to spirit damage. At level 12, unlock the Painbringer upgrade for Ring of Pain, which makes the circle move to follow Bull. This makes the ability so much better and easier to use, since Bull will constantly want to go near enemies to fight them, and with this upgrade, the Ring of Pain will always get more enemies in its radius to deal spirit damage to. I just wish Cassandra's Blessed Blades ability had an upgrade like this. At level 13, unlock the Fervor passive, which grants Bull a 30% damage bonus for 5 seconds when an enemy dies within 10 meters of him. This will occur very often in fights against larger groups of enemies, so in these types of encounters, Bull will basically always have a 30% damage bonus. Unlocking this also grants +3 strength. At level 14, unlock the Scenting Blood passive, which grants Bull a 50% speed bonus and a 10% bonus to his critical hit chance whenever a badly wounded enemy is within 10 meters of him. Badly wounded in this case means under 35% health. Unlocking this also grants +3 constitution. Finally, at level 15, unlock Devour, which damages an enemy and heals Bull. The amount of health that Bull regains is based on his missing health, 0.2% restored per 1% of missing health. He also gets a damage bonus of +2% per 1% missing health. If Ring of Pain is active when you use Devour, the healing will be doubled, so 0.4% restored per 1% missing health. At the end of the mid-game, when you unlock Devour, you can remove Warcry from your ability bar if Bull seems comfortable enough with his HP. This is because you will want Bull's health to go down so that you can do more damage and heal more with Devour. From this moment onward, you don't really care about Guard. The amount you'll get from charging Bull is usually not much, so it's fine. The active abilities on your bar will be as follows: Mighty Blow, Pommel Strike, Charging Bull, Grappling Chain, Ring of Pain, and Devour. We'll be picking up 2 more abilities in the next 2 level ups at the start of the late game. The late game consists of levels 16 to 23. I usually finish the game with Trespasser included at around level 23-24 since I'm not a completionist. So with my builds, I assume that most people will also complete the game around this level. So in the late game, I'm finalizing Bull's build with 2 final powerful abilities and a bunch of upgrades and passives. At level 16, unlock Dragon Rage. This is a strong damaging ability which has 3 strikes, and each strike drains 5% of your health. The description in the game is wrong, but it says 2%. The damage you deal with this is also increased based on the warrior's missing health, and if you have Ring of Pain active when you use Dragon Rage, that will also give you a further 50% damage bonus. It's a high risk, high reward kind of ability. At level 17, we move away for just a bit from the Reaver tree back to the Vanguard tree to unlock Livid. This is an activated ability which lasts for 15 seconds and grants the warrior a damage reduction and bonus damage based on the number of enemies within 5 meters of your warrior. The damage reduction and bonus damage are both 10% per nearby enemy, with a maximum of 50%. It has a fairly long cooldown, but since Bull enjoys being super close to as many enemies as possible, this ability will make him more durable while also increasing his damage. In fact, if you're struggling a bit with durability in the mid-game as you're unlocking and starting to use the Reaver abilities, you could absolutely pick up Livid earlier to help you with damage reduction. At level 18, unlock the Lifeblood upgrade for Devour, which causes it to restore double the amount of health. So the base healing goes to 0.4% for every 1% missing health, and with Ring of Pain active when using Devour, it gets doubled to 0.8% health restored for every 1% missing HP. At this point, you're essentially restoring almost entirely the health you've lost if you have Ring of Pain active, making Devour an extremely powerful sustain ability. If you add heal bonuses on top of this, you may actually be able to out-heal damage you take. At level 19, unlock the Ravage upgrade for Dragon Rage, which grants a 50% damage bonus to it and also reduces Devour's cooldown by 2 seconds with each of Dragon Rage's strikes. Since Dragon Rage drains your health with each strike, it's very nice to reduce Devour's cooldown with it so that you can heal up soon after using Dragon Rage. Devour's cooldown is 12 seconds, so you'll get half of its cooldown taken away by Dragon Rage with this upgrade, and you also have the passive which grants cooldown reduction whenever you crit, so Devour should come off cooldown very quickly. At level 20, unlock the Blood Frenzy upgrade, which grants Bull a 5% damage bonus for each 10% missing health. Great to have since you're planning on enemies dealing damage to Bull, or else using Dragon Rage to reduce Bull's HP. Unlocking this also grants +3 strength. At level 21, unlock the Terrifying Fury passive, which causes your critical hits to have a 25% chance to inflict the Fear status effect onto enemies for 6 seconds. Unlocking this also grants +3 cunning. If you really care about the Fear effect and want to unlock it earlier, like say you're using Dorian and want to increase his damage by having an additional source of fear, you can unlock Blood Frenzy and Terrifying Fury at levels 13 and 14 instead of Fervor and Scenting Blood. You'll still be able to pick up Devour no matter which side you unlock first, so it's up to you to decide which passives you prefer earlier. I personally prefer the ones on the right side, which grant the warrior great bonuses when being near wounded or dying enemies. But Terrifying Fury can be good in a fear-based party utilizing Reavers and Necromancers, and some fire spells. At level 22, I recommend picking up Whirlwind, not to use it, but because it's a prerequisite for a very good passive ability. Be sure to disable Whirlwind in your tactics after you unlock it since the AI isn't very good at using it. At level 23, unlock the Clear a Path passive. This causes Bull to regain stamina whenever he hits multiple targets with a single swing of his weapon, 10% for each target above 1. Unlocking this also grants +3 strength. Frankly, I would absolutely unlock Clear a Path earlier in the game if it weren't for the fact that it requires Whirlwind, which is usually useless for a companion build. Whirlwind just isn't worth it unless you're controlling the character directly, and even then I find that other damaging abilities are just better. With this final passive unlocked, we reach the end of the late game. You have all your active abilities: Mighty Blow, Pommel Strike, Charging Bull, Livid, Grappling Chain, Ring of Pain, Devour, and Dragon Rage. Now we've reached the super late game, aka levels 24 to 27. Here I'll just recommend a few more upgrades and passives for your abilities. You may want to unlock these earlier instead of some of the other passives or upgrades I mentioned, depending on how you feel Bull is performing in battle and what he needs to improve in the moment. Before I give you these final 4 recommendations, let me note that you don't necessarily have to unlock the abilities I mentioned exactly in the order I mentioned them. I just find it easier to talk about level ranges and recommend specific abilities for each level because it structures the guide better. But feel free to make a note of the abilities I recommend and decide for yourself which ones you want to unlock early and which ones you're fine to keep for later. And if there's some ability or upgrade that you personally don't find that useful or don't enjoy using, then feel free to ignore it and choose something else to replace it based on the general theme of the build and the things I've discussed in this section. Here are some useful upgrades for your active abilities to pick up either in the super late game or switch with some abilities or upgrades I mentioned earlier. The Endless Strength upgrade for Livid makes Livid reset its duration if your warrior strikes a killing blow while Livid is active. This should be very useful when fighting groups of enemies, since you'll be able to keep the damage reduction and damage bonus from Livid active for longer. The Gore and Trample upgrade for Charging Bull makes your warrior's next ability after using Charging Bull no longer cost any stamina. Since you'll be using quite a lot of stamina on your abilities, Ring of Pain in particular will drain a lot of it. It's very nice to be able to occasionally use an ability for 0 stamina. The Stay Down upgrade for Mighty Blow makes the knockdown effect last for 3 extra seconds. Since Bull does extra damage to knock down targets, it's great for them to stay down longer so you can damage them more effectively. The Staggering Strike for Pommel Strike is the same thing but for stun. It increases the stun duration by 3 seconds, thus increasing Bull's damage since the bonus also applies to stunned enemies. Of course, for both of these upgrades, you have to also take into consideration the inherent usefulness of disabling enemies. Any ability that stops enemies from moving and attacking is very, very good. If you can get extra bonuses from these disabling effects such as bonus damage, even better. Moving on to gear. Iron Bull's starting gear is actually a bit more interesting than the starting gear of the other companions due to his weapon Bull's Edge. It's a great axe that deals AoE damage, has plus 7% attack, plus 3% crit damage bonus, and on kill the target explodes for 75% weapon damage, similar to the effect of the Walking Bomb spell. It doesn't have any upgrade slots, but it does have an empty rune slot. Unfortunately, after a few levels, its base damage gets too low for it to be worth continuing to use Bull's Edge. Still, a much better starting weapon than most everyone else, with the only exception being Varric with his crossbow that is able to be upgraded. Bull's armor is weak, a simple reinforced defender armor that grants plus 2% melee and ranged defense. I absolutely recommend changing this to a better armor, or at least adding some arms and legs upgrades to it as soon as possible. Now let's talk about the recommended gear. The main stats you want to improve for Bull are offensive stats. In particular, attack, which increases your character's damage, critical chance, which of course is vital for Bull to inflict critical strikes more often. Critical damage bonus is also a good one to pick up if your crit chance is high enough so that your crits do more damage. And finally, stagger on hit may be a decent bonus to pick up here and there because it causes your character's attacks to have a chance to stun. You're already stunning enemies with some of Bull's abilities, but it never hurts to have an additional source since Bull does extra damage to stunned enemies. In terms of defensive stats, the most important one is maximum health, which you can often get or craft on armors and accessories, and arms and legs upgrades for armors. You want to have the extra HP so that you can play around with your health with abilities like Dragon Rage, as well as be able to take more damage before having to heal with Devour or a potion. And of course, heal bonus is a nice pickup here and there so that Devour and your potions heal more of Bull's HP. Melee, ranged, and magic defense are pretty good, but I wouldn't necessarily look specifically to have these stats on items. Max health and heal bonus are far more important. The main reason I don't recommend focusing on these defense stats is because you can get them through the attributes, aka primary stats, I recommend. I actually recommend skipping strength entirely, weirdly enough. Strength increases the attack score of warriors by 0.5% per point, but its secondary effect is to increase damage against the guard, which frankly isn't that amazing. Not that many enemies have guard, and even so, guard isn't hard to get rid of, especially if you have a weapon and shield tank who can obliterate an enemy's guard with shield bash. If you feel like shield bash isn't enough and want extra damage versus guard, just pick up the guard smasher passive in the two-handed tree for Bull so that all his attacks rend more of an enemy's guard. The best primary stat to focus on is Cunning, which increases critical chance and range defense by 0.5% per point. Critical chance is really important for Bull's build, and range defense is great to have since Bull is not as strong against ranged characters until he can reach them in melee. The second attribute I recommend is Willpower because it increases attack for all classes by 0.5% per point, while also increasing magic defense for the same amount too. Attack increases your character's damage, so it's obviously great to get it increased through Willpower, but it's much better than increasing your strength since you also get the magic defense here. The same thing I said about ranged attackers applies to enemy mages too. Until he gets up close and personal, it's good to take less damage from them. The third and final attribute that is useful is Constitution, which increases health by 5 per point and also melee defense by 0.5% per point. This is last in priority out of the three attributes though, simply due to the fact that you can get huge health bonuses on gear, so the 5 HP per point of Constitution doesn't feel as strong as the bonuses to attack or crit chance you get from Willpower and Cunning. Plus, in terms of melee defense, Iron Bull is Kunari, and so he gets 10% melee defense already as a racial bonus. In terms of utility stats, you're mainly interested in increasing Bull's stamina. Ring of Pain specifically will eat up your stamina, so having as much of it as possible means you can keep the ability sustained for longer. There's of course your other abilities which you want to have enough stamina to use, so whenever you can get a bonus to stamina, take it. Now that I've explained why you need these stats, I'll also take you through the materials you'll want to use if you're going to be crafting weapons and armors for Bull. In terms of utility slots, you mainly want leather or cloth, and especially the materials that only increase Cunning or Willpower, not the ones that increase 2 attributes. You could also use metal utility, of course, for Constitution or Strength increases, but as I've said, those 2 attributes are actually not as useful for Iron Bull as you'd expect. For offense slots, you want leather offense first and foremost for critical chance and critical damage. Then metal offense is decent for bonuses to attack and stagger on hit. Finally, cloth offense is also okay since you can increase attack and critical damage with it, but be careful when you're crafting to look for materials that have these specific stats and not other ones. For defense slots, I recommend going all in on metal defense using the metals that increase maximum health. Wherever you have a non-metal defense slot, cloth is best for heal bonus or optionally magic defense. If you can't avoid it, leather defense is okay for ranged defense bonuses. In terms of weapons, you're interested only in two-handed weapons that have area of effect damage, not single target damage. So don't use mauls because those only hit one opponent at a time. Focus on greatswords and great axes. I'll give you a few examples of good weapons. The Warlord Greatsword is a rare greatsword you can obtain by completing the side quest A Spirit in the Lake in the Hinterlands. It has plus 2% attack, plus 3 strength, and increases maximum stamina by 10, plus it has grip and pommel upgrade slots so you can improve its stats further. Hakon's Valor is a unique greatsword from the Jaws of Hakon DLC that you can obtain in the Stone Bear Holds arena after you complete the side quest Hakon's Trials. It has a Master Frost rune for plus 16 cold damage, plus 50% armor penetration, plus 7% attack, plus 8% heal on kill, and a huge plus 41% stagger on hit. Rebuke of the Sunderland is a unique great axe you can loot from a corpse on the top floor of the Elf's Blood Tower in Emprise du Lion. It grants a huge plus 24% critical chance, plus 8% sunder on hit, and plus 7.5% extra damage for each enemy within 8 meters. There's a lot of amazing unique two-handed weapons, and I'm not going to mention all of them, but I think you get the point. Either you have a weapon that has amazing stats on its own, even if it doesn't have any upgrade slots, or else you get a weapon with good stats that has upgrade slots so you can increase its power that way. In terms of crafted weapons, the Black Emporium has a lot of great Tier 2 and Tier 3 schematics you can purchase, like the Tier 2 Jagged Battle Axe, Tier 3 Ornate Battle Axe, Tier 3 Firm Greatsword, and of course some legendary schematics in there as well, such as the one for the Axe of the Dragon Hunter. Another great Tier 3 weapon schematic is the Anderfel's Cleaver, which you can get in one of 2 War Table operations, a Golden Opportunity with Josephine, or negotiate a deal for weapon plans with Liliana. In general, you want to prioritize weapons that mostly have offense slots, since you can't find cloth or leather utility slots for willpower or cunning. Only the Anderfel's Cleaver has a cloth utility slot out of all Greatsword and Great Axe schematics. The ideal offense material is leather, since it can increase your critical chance and critical damage, but metal is very common on weapons, and you can increase attack and stagger on hit with it. In terms of weapon upgrades, you're interested in leather and metal offense slots mainly. Unfortunately, similar to the weapons themselves, you can't get cloth or leather utility, so that means no increases to willpower or cunning, other than the Tier 3 Smooth Pommel schematic, which has cloth utility, but which is unfortunately only found as random loot, so it's not guaranteed you'll get it. As for what rune to add to Bull's weapon, it depends. You could get higher damage bonuses if you use Demon Slaying, Corrupting, Cleansing, or Dragon Slaying runes. But if you go that route, you'll have to keep replacing your runes whenever you go into a different area to fight a specific type of enemy, or else have multiple weapons in your inventory with runes of each type to switch to based on what you're fighting. Personally, I find that too tedious, so I would just choose an elemental rune instead. Even if you do at some points come across enemies who are resistant to that element, it's overall a small amount of damage they're resisting compared to most of Bull's weapon damage, which is physical. Cold tends to be the weakest type of damage to use unless you're specifically going to fight something you know is weak to cold. The reason for this is that a lot of wildlife is naturally resistant to cold, and more importantly, undead and despair demons are resistant to cold as well, and the latter two are quite strong. So for most situations, I would use lightning or fire runes. Undead especially tend to be weak to fire, despair demons too. Even though 5 of the high dragons are resistant to fire, fire still tends to be useful against most enemies. And for high dragon fights, I recommend having a second weapon with a dragon slaying rune in it. Moving on to armor. The heavy armors you want for Bull have very high armor to shield him from damage, but more importantly have metal in the defense slot for maximum health. For schematics, these are the armors with metal defense that I recommend. The Tier 1 Defender Mail and Sturdy Defender Mail. You can get the Defender Mail schematic for free by asking Harridan Haven if he has any designs. The Sturdy Defender Mail schematic can be randomly looted or also bought at the Black Emporium. The Tier 2 Vanguard Coat, Vanguard Mail, and the Sturdy Vanguard Coat and Mail. You can randomly loot all of these schematics or else purchase them from the Black Emporium. I recommend the sturdy versions. The Tier 3 Battlemaster Mail, Superior Battlemaster Mail, and Superior Battlemaster Coat. All 3 of these are also random loot, this time from Tier 3 chests, and all 3 can also be purchased from the Black Emporium, though they are quite expensive. And for Tier 4 armors, if you want the higher armor score, I recommend the Refined Battlemaster Mail you can get in the Jaws of Hakon DLC after sealing a rift in the Frostback Basin between the Swampside Camp and the Shattered Wall. For non-crafted armors, here are a few examples of good ones. Early on, you can find a common armor with maximum health bonus like the Defender Mail, either as random loot or purchased from the Redcliffe Armor and Upgrades Merchant, though of course you can get any high armor piece with other base bonuses like willpower or constitution, and just add to it some maximum health arms and legs upgrades. Rare armors like the Superior Battlemaster Mail and Superior Vanguard Mail also inherently have a maximum health bonus, though of course the same thing applies here too. As long as you're getting some max health bonuses from your upgrades, you can get other base armors that have willpower or constitution or some defense stats. However, generally speaking, I would stay away from the super tiny defense increases of under 5% and instead favor the armors that grant bonuses to attributes, since with attributes like willpower and constitution you get bonuses towards 2 useful stats at the same time. Some of the good rare armors with attribute bonuses are the Superior Battlemaster Coat, which grants +7 constitution and +7% heal bonus, or at an earlier level the Superior Vanguard Coat, which grants +3 constitution and +3% heal bonus. One other thing you have to be careful about with armors is that some of them unfortunately can't be equipped by Qunari warriors. Adventurer, Free Army, and/or Legion armors are for humans only. The Warden armors are for non-Kunari warriors, and the Templar Commander armor and the unique armor of the Knights Divine are human only. Just keep these things in mind when you're purchasing or crafting armors especially. For arms and legs upgrades, focus on maximum health as much as possible, which means large amounts of metal in the defense slot. Don't worry, you can find good arms upgrades at shops if you don't want to craft them yourself. For example, the Redcliffe Armor and Upgrades Merchant in the Hinterlands has Defender Mail Arms, which grant plus 24 max health, the Vanguard Mail Arms, which grant plus 30 max health, or the Superior Vanguard Arms, which grant plus 45 max health. Safi in Val Royeaux has Battlemaster Mail Arms for plus 54 max health, but these can also be randomly found in some looted armor. Safi and Val Royeaux, as well as the Canyon Merchant in the Hissing Wastes, also have the Superior Battlemaster Mail Arms for a huge plus 81 max health. Arms with high bonuses to Constitution can also be good until you can get the highest max health bonuses, so be on the lookout for ones you randomly find in looted armor, especially rare ones, though you can also purchase some here and there from merchants like the Battlemaster Armor Arms from the Canyon Merchant in the Hissing Wastes that grants plus 11 Constitution. With legs upgrades, unfortunately you can't find any at all that grant max health, so if you want to get Bull the extra HP, you'll have to craft some. The best non-crafted legs you can get for him are the ones with heal bonus, since Bull can take advantage of the extra healing, or else ranged or magic defense, but only if they are decently high, over 5%. If you want to craft arms with max health, here are the best schematics. Tier 1 Defender Mail Arms, Tier 2 Vanguard Mail Arms, and Tier 3 Battlemaster Mail Arms. If you want to craft legs with max health, here are the best schematics. Tier 1 Defender Mail Legs, Tier 2 Vanguard Coat Legs, and Tier 3 Battlemaster Mail Legs. Almost forgot about the helmet slot, since helmets are frankly not that good in Inquisition. On top of that, Bull as a Kunari can't wear helmets, which is a good thing considering how ugly they are. Kunari characters can only equip Vitar in the helmet slot, which is a special Kunari paint. You can actually get some nice offensive bonuses with Bull's Vitar, like critical chance, critical damage, or attack. The rare Vitars are even better because they pair an offensive stat with some attribute bonuses as well, so you can get something like the Intense Elf Snake Vitar, which grants plus 4 Constitution and Willpower and plus 10% critical damage, which you can purchase from Safi or Havel in Val Royeaux, or find as random loot. The Keen Deathroot, Elfsnake, or Felandaris Vitar are also great, since they grant crit chance and cunning bonuses, but these are random loot only. There's only one base game unique Vitar, Arashok's Vitar, which grants plus 8% attack, plus 4% crit chance, and plus 4 willpower. Frankly, the Keen Felandaris Vitar is just better because it has plus 8% crit chance and plus 5 cunning, but if you want to see the nice purple icon of a unique item, Arashok's Vitar isn't bad. The other two unique Vitar are unfortunately found as part of the Jaws of Hakan and the Descent DLCs. The Descent DLC Vitar, called Kretal Vitar, is actually the best out of all of them, granting plus 9% attack, plus 9% crit chance, and plus 59 max health. But I know not everyone enjoys playing through the Descent, and it's a super late game DLC anyway, so I'm not expecting people to find and use this Vitar. So my advice is to stick with the rare ones. Moving on to accessories. For belts, I recommend ones that grant extra max health or a heal bonus. You can find common, rare, and unique belts with these effects separately, but there is also a unique belt of life that grants plus 100 max health and plus 10% heal bonus, which can be purchased from the Black Emporium, though it's fairly expensive. When it comes to amulets, I usually recommend cooldown reduction, but Bull already has enough of it as part of his abilities, so instead I recommend something that gives him extra stamina or stamina on kill, critical chance, or a high attribute bonus. Common amulets are pretty shitty, so out of those, just use whatever you loot in the early game and focus on getting a good rare or unique amulet later on. My favorite rare amulet for Bull that isn't tied to RNG is the Enhanced Stamina Amulet, which grants plus 25 max stamina, and which can be purchased at the Griffin Wing Keep Merchant in the Western Approach, while also being a rare random loot or random trials reward. The best unique amulet for Bull is Amulet of the Death Siphon, which makes the wearer gain both health and stamina whenever an enemy dies nearby. Very powerful effect, especially when combined with other bonuses Bull gets when enemies die near him, and possible heal bonuses you have from other gear. You can get this amulet by completing the Emprise du Lion side quest, Sifting Through Rubble. The Amulet of Renewal is also a good alternative because it makes the wearer regenerate mana or stamina at a higher rate. You can loot or get this as a reward from Imshael in Suladin Keep during the Emprise du Lion side quest, Call Me Imshael. Finally, for rings, you want to focus on a particular offensive stat that you feel you need more of. If, for example, you didn't manage to get a lot of crit chance on Bull's weapon, this is a place where you can get some extra points. Just like with the amulets, the common rings are kind of shitty since their bonuses are minimal, so just use whatever until you get a decent rare one later on. Some good rare rings are the Enhanced Ring of Attack, which grants plus 5% attack, the Enhanced Ring of Critical Chance, which grants plus 5% critical chance, the Enhanced Ring of Critical Damage, which grants plus 10% critical damage, the Enhanced Ring of Life Drain, that grants plus 5% heal on kill, if you're interested in that kind of thing. The best unique ring is the Ring of Slicing, which grants plus 5% critical chance and plus 10% critical damage, and can be purchased from the Black Emporium. The Superb Ring of Attack is quite good with its plus 10% attack and can be looted from a chest in the Dwarven Tomb near the Sand Crags camp during the Hissing Wastes quest, the Tomb of Firel. The Superb Ring of Critical Damage can also be looted during the Tomb of Firel quest and grants plus 20% critical damage. The Superb Ring of Life Drain grants plus 10% heal on kill and can be looted in Crestwood from the Northern Hunter High Dragon. The Superb Ring of Staggering grants a pretty big plus 10% stagger on hit and can be looted from a chest behind the locked door on the Grand Balcony during the Emerald Grave side quest, Chateau d'Onterre. As you can see, you have quite a lot of good options with rings, though I'd say that the Ring of Slicing is the best overall since it's also easy to obtain in the Black Emporium. Let's move on to Tactics, where I discuss how to set up Iron Bull's automatic behavior in combat, which abilities to set to preferred, which ones to keep as just active, and which ones should be disabled, either because they're not worth spending resources on, or because you need to use them manually. Unfortunately, this is the extent of Inquisition's Tactics menu, so you can't set a character's behavior in more detail. I'll also discuss party composition afterwards, since there are some important basics to keep in mind as well as special combinations for Bull specifically. The disabled abilities should be Warcry, but only once you unlock Devour. It grants the warrior guard when used, which is great in the early game for some extra survivability, but once you unlock Devourer and other Reaver abilities, you want Bull to play around with his missing health without the interference from the extra health bar that guard provides. Block and Slash. As I mentioned in the recommended abilities section, you're really just unlocking this so that you can unlock other two-handed abilities. Finally, you may want to disable Charging Bull if you're having trouble with how the AI uses it. For example, if Bull ends up flinging himself off a cliff or uses it too much and wastes stamina. From my own experience, that hasn't been the case, so I use it as an active ability, but it's not like this ability is super integral to the build. It's just supposed to help you get to ranged enemies faster. The preferred abilities should be Mighty Blow. It does a nice amount of AoE damage and knocks enemies down. Devour for its healing and of course damage onto a target. Ring of Pain. I'm adding this to the preferred section with the caveat that you should change it to just active if Bull doesn't have enough stamina for this to be able to be used that often, or if you notice he uses the ability at the start of a fight before he's actually engaged in melee with multiple enemies. Ideally, you want him to use this as much as possible, but only once he's in the middle of a group of enemies. Grappling Chain. This one is for pulling multiple enemies into melee range with Bull so that his damaging abilities can be used more effectively. And finally, Livid. It increases Bull's resilience and damage at the same time. Very powerful ability for him. The active abilities should be Pommel Strike, because it stuns the target. It's a single target ability, however, so it's not as powerful as Mighty Blow. Charging Bull, because it helps the warrior close the gap between them and ranged enemies, but as I mentioned earlier, you could also disable this one if the AI is using it weirdly. And finally, I'm adding Dragon Rage to the active abilities because it can be quite dangerous to let the AI use this too often due to the self-damage. It's a super powerful ability, and you can absolutely switch to control Bull every once in a while to use it manually if you want him to use it, particularly against a high priority enemy. In terms of party composition, for Bull I actually do have a couple of recommendations because his build is so focused on damage and certain types of disabling effects. First and foremost, you need a proper tank in your party. Ideally a weapon and shield tank like Cassandra, who can constantly taunt enemies and who is meant to do less damage overall but be far more durable than a melee damager like Bull due to high guard generation and a focus on more defensive stats. I particularly recommend a shielder because they can also have the shield bash ability, which can absolutely obliterate enemy guard if upgraded, so it has huge utility. Shield bash is also a great impact detonator for combos, so it's extra nice to have. Other than a tank, for your other two characters you could technically bring anyone, but if you want your party to have high synergy, then you may want to consider having a fire and necromancy based mage like Dorian, or perhaps your own Inquisitor if you decide to go for that kind of build yourself. Some fire and necromancy spells have effects to do with fear, as do Reaver abilities, plus the Warhorn ability from the Warrior's Battlemaster tree. As a Reaver, Bull has bonuses when fighting feared enemies, so this is a great status effect to have multiple sources of in your party. You can also focus your party on stunning and knocking down enemies, since Bull can do extra damage to enemies who are disabled in such a way. He obviously has ways of disabling them himself, but more sources of these effects are always useful. A second two-handed warrior would have a few abilities that knock down, and you also have spells like the Rift's Mage Stone Fist or Veil Strike, which are amazing. Stone Fist can also be used as an impact detonator, just like a two-hander's Mighty Blow. Plus, it does spirit damage, which isn't resisted by enemies. A Templar warrior's Wrath of Heaven stuns nearby enemies, as does a warrior's Warhorn from the Battlemaster tree if upgraded with Seize the Moment. In terms of the official combos you can cause on enemies, Bull has Mighty Blow as an impact detonator, which can be used best on frozen enemies for the Shatter combo, or on paralyzed enemies for the Discharge combo. The Shatter combo has a large cold damage bonus, and the Discharge combo has a large electricity damage bonus and also inflicts shock. So for the mage or mages you use in your party, I'd recommend picking up the Lightning Bolt and Winter's Grasp spells for paralyzing and freezing an enemy respectively. The extra damage and bonus effects from these combos are worth it if you can detonate them, so these are great spells to have. You could also use Ice Mine if you have an ice-focused mage for freeze effects, but mines are always so situational because you have to lure enemies onto them, so it's not my first recommendation. I would also recommend for one of your characters to have effects that sunder enemy armor. This can be from abilities, like various rogue abilities from the Sabotage tree, or from gear with sunder on hit or sunder when hit effects. Armor penetration is only useful for the particular character who has it, while a sunder effect benefits the entire party, since the enemy's armor is lower for everyone. Finally, I have one more piece of advice when it comes to mages in your party interacting with Bull's build. Barrier might not be the best thing to cast on Bull, because just like with Guard, it's a second bar on top of his regular HP that stops him from being able to lower his health for Reaver benefits. Because of this, I'd recommend that you either manually control your mage and cast Barrier only on your other characters, or else to have a mage that doesn't use Barrier at all. In the early game, it's absolutely fine and even useful for Bull to have Barrier cast on him, since he doesn't yet gain anything from having lower HP, but once he unlocks Ring of Pain and Devour, try to avoid casting Barrier on him unless he's really low on health and his Devourer is on cooldown so he can't heal up yet. In conclusion, Iron Bull is a two-handed melee damager focused on AoE damage and various effects such as fear, stun, and knockdown, and who loves to fight against injured enemies while he himself is injured. Even though he's mostly focused on damage, you can consider some of his abilities as being somewhat supportive towards your other characters. His grappling chain, for example, pulls enemies towards him and very likely away from some of your other squishier party members, which can protect them from being damaged. Stun and knockdown effects onto enemies disable them temporarily and thus also protect your party from their attacks. I enjoy having Iron Bull in my party, though I have to admit that Cassandra is always going to be my first pick as a warrior because a proper weapon and shield tank is so powerful and pretty much essential unless you're doing something really funky and you're skilled enough to pull it off. but Bull can do a lot of damage with a build like this, and his Reaver abilities look so satisfying, so I love using him as a second warrior in the situations when I'm not using two mages. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this build guide for Iron Bull in Dragon Age Inquisition. If you're looking forward to more videos about Dragon Age and other games I like, do remember to subscribe, and leave a like and comment while you're at it too. They really help. This has been B-Tier Mutineer. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.